This is a little story of mine called Favourite Shirts. I'm going to try and read it all in a oneer, so forgive me if I trip up a little bit. Favourite Shirts. In 1974, my father left my mother. I wandered in from school, 9 years old, chucking my leaden school bag into the hall, finding her clutching a grubby note written in blunt builder's pencil. The first line of it said, "If I stay, I drink." That was all I saw of it. Truth is, if he stayed, he drank. If he went, he drank. If he did anything, he drank. Nothing more than a piece of blame-shifting projection. It meant nothing to me. Even then I knew that. I slumped down on the couch and watched TV. Dad to me was just a presence, disinterested meat in the room. I'm from the generation of kids that spent lots of time stood outside downbeat pubs with a Coke and a bag of crisps waiting for your beloved parent finishing their session. No such thing as a child-friendly style bar with kids' portions of fish fingers available to all comers back in 1970s Scotland. My mother, she always tried to make things normal. It never really was, but the illusion worked well on me at that age. It was only when I began to spend a little time later on at friends' houses I would think, where's their raging alcoholic dad figure? A genuine shock to me that every household did not have one. On the upside, for me, with the breakup, there was no longer groups of strange drunk men piling into the house at random times with my mother and me barricaded into the back bedroom. And when I say barricaded, I mean literally barricaded. Cheapo, rickety, flat-pack wardrobe pushed in front of the bedroom door, barricaded. Gradually, over the coming weeks, the signs of 1970s single-parent creeping poverty began to sneak into our home. Nasty offcuts of rubber meat were being served at tea time. Not that cooking had ever been something my mum had the slightest interest in. She saw it as the worst kind of slavery and did it with a genuine hate in her heart. Consequently, everything she served tasted just slightly worse than ghastly. Black, crispy pancakes, unidentified lumps of something grey, runny yellow shit with what might have been one-time chips made in the old wire basket of bubbling lard. She would smash and crash around that kitchen for half an hour like Keith Moon laying waste to a hotel bedroom, and then bang a plate of something onto the table with utter contempt. Meekly I would sometimes ask, "What is it?" "It's food!" was the only ever reply. I would quietly slip away with it on a tray and sit in front of the TV and begin to hide the food in my pocket for dumping in the park later. Occasionally she would shout through from the kitchen guiltily, "I'm a great baker, you know. I won first prize at school." "Well, fucking bake something then," I said in my head. She never ever did. At the time, money must have been getting tighter and tighter. I was oblivious to any of that. Every 2 days or so we would go to the beach with an old shopping trolley and collect driftwood from the shoreline. We would then trundle it home and then burn it in a tiny coal fire that was installed at the back of the bedroom of some of the older council houses. It would spark and crackle like crazy and made the room smell like seaweed. If there was one thing she hated even more than cooking, it was ironing. Sunday evenings were fraught with tension as the various bits and pieces of my school uniform had to be assembled, washed, and then the dreaded ironing. Eventually, over the months, the ironing went by the wayside, and I would be pitching up to school in the most crushed clothes in the history of textile. Teachers would look at me askance as I ambled into the class looking like a corduroy accordion that had fallen in a canal. As poverty gripped, the first things to go were the unnecessary expenses, shoe polish, light bulbs, anything that we could do without. In an attempt to save money in any way possible, Mum made an investment in something called the K-Tel Hair Magician. This was a handy little device designed to save you money and time on expensive haircuts. It's basically a nasty, cheap beige comb that incorporated a razor blade in between the teeth. The theory was that as you combed, you simultaneously cut. In reality, it just tore lumps of hair and skin out of your scalp by the roots in the most painful way imaginable. I would squirm and cry as my mum scraped and pulled it through my ginger mop. Never thinking to change the blade at any point, she persevered week on week as I sat bubbling on a kitchen stool. The razor grew blunter and blunter and the pain grew worse and worse. Eventually I was left looking like a homeless child going through his first week of chemotherapy. Couple that with my mega crushed uniform, I was cutting quite a dash in the school playground and beginning to be noticed in a somewhat less than positive way by both teachers and fellow pupils. One of these awful, tense Sunday nights, my mum was throwing blizzards of clothes from the washing basket in anger. "Where's your school shirt?" she was shouting from the kitchen, hot point keyed up and ready to go. I just sunk lower in my chair, saying nothing, knowing full well it was under my bed, covered in broken pen ink, and that would not go down well on a Sunday night at 9 p.m. Just time for a session with the K-Tail hair magician to do its evil bidding, a bowl of sugar puffs, then off to bed. In the 70s, central heating in a council house just wasn't a thing. You kept the place warm any way you could, usually a 2-bar electric fire and a combination of death-trap paraffin heaters or a portable gas bottle thing that drenched every room in condensation and could only be safely used with your windows wide open, rendering the whole thing utterly pointless. You might as well have burned your money in an ashtray and warmed your hands on that. We had dropped even below those modest standards, and the smell from the burning beechwood left all my clothing stinking like a day-old fish-based barbecue. On school mornings in the winter, to avoid the biting cold in the bedroom, I would pull my pre-crushed uniform from the bottom of my bed under the blankets and get dressed before my feet hit the threadbare carpet. I reached out and I felt for my bundle of clothes and pulled them in. Something looked and felt different. I could feel a strange shiny material that was alien to me, and in the darkness of my tent bed there was an eerie green day-glow light. I couldn't make sense of it. I threw the covers off me and I saw that I had in my hand the brightest, greenest button-down shirt ever created. Green, it doesn't begin to cover it. Incandescent, it lit the room up like a flare gun. There are no words to accurately describe the burning, searing brightness of this piece of clothing. I had to look away as I thought my eyeballs would literally melt in their sockets. I rushed into the kitchen holding this thing aloft. Mum, I can't wear this!" "What are you talking about?" she retorted. "I can't wear this!" I pleaded. "Don't be silly," she said, batting my protests away and fumbling in her handbag. The colour," my tiny voice said, trailing away to nothing. "It's all there is," she said with her growing anger. "Nobody will even notice." Yes, they fucking will, I thought as I sloped back to my bedroom holding the eye-watering shirt at arm's length. Trying not to look at it, I pulled it onto my milk bottle white body. Felt weird. Not nylon, not wool, not cotton, like a combination of industrial plastics and metal wire. I looked in the mirror, I felt the tears welling up inside of me as I knew this was going to be the worst day ever. Walking to school at a snail's pace, I pulled my jumble sale blazer tightly around me. I didn't have a jumper to cover it up with, so even with the blazer, large portions of the shirt were clearly visible from space. It was late. The playground was thankfully empty. As I wandered down the corridor, I heard the unmistakable voice of Mr. McLeod from behind me. He was known as Clouter McLeod, as he wasn't adverse to dishing out a clattering backhander to a small child without a thought. His speciality was pulling kids out of their seats by their ears and making them strain on their tiptoes as he held their lugs just out of reach of their heads. "You laddie, why are you not in class?" I turned to face him, and he caught the full glare of the shirt without warning. Wrong-footed, he stepped back, and I saw him almost raise his right hand to protect his eyes. I began to explain my lateness, but this was no longer an issue. Yes, he spluttered. "Get to class!" I walked on. Reaching the door of my classroom, I pressed my face against the glass panel and looked in. Mr. Lang was writing on the board, and all the kids were paying various levels of attention to him. With a very heavy heart, I sighed, opened the door and stepped in. An audible wave of gasps went through the room as the shirt from Planet X made its debut. Suddenly everyone was jabbering and giggling. From the blackboard, without looking round, Mr. Lang boomed, "Out, knock!" My shoulders dropped and I turned on my heels, closing the door behind me. I tapped weakly. "Come!" came the voice of Lofty Lang. I entered the class, and this time the wave of laughter nearly knocked me off my feet, every face screwed up in mocking hysterics. A voice from the back shrieked, "My eyes, my eyes!" Mr. Lang stood cruelly and let the hilarity run for a bit before raising his hand firmly and decreeing, "That's enough, settle down." Looking at me and gently shaking his head in a "I give up" gesture, he waved his hand, indicating that I should take my place in the class. I made my way through the desks to mine at the centre of the room, my face almost as red as the shirt was green. I sat like a stone in my chair, burning with shame, hearing the titters and feeling the occasional rolled-up ball of paper bounce off my back. Eventually, the class became unteachable with the distraction of my insane clothing. "Sir, I'm getting a headache. Sir, I can't see properly." The shirt and I were moved to the back of the class by 11 o'clock to try and dampen down the growing chaos. By 12:30, word of my unique garment was all round the building, and I knew I had to face the imminent nightmare of school dinners. Well, I decided to give that a miss and go straight to the playground. Kids began to gather round me, rolling on the ground in mock agony, shielding their eyes and clutching at their throats. I could see through the windows of the staff room teachers with coffee mugs and fags leaning over each other to catch a glimpse of me in the shirt blazing away like a firework display. Filing back into the class for the afternoon, everybody who passed me either reeled in shock or guffawed uncontrollably. We were all ushered into the main hall. Horror of horrors, I'd forgotten that today was the day of the official class school photo. Once a year, photographers would come to the school and take pictures of the class and individual portraits for the proud parents to buy as a record of their school career. The whole class would line up at the back of the school building for the group shot, and then you would go back into the gym one by one for single shots with lighting and a nice floaty sky cloud backdrop. Even worse, this was a no blazer scenario. Just your shirt and tie and a jersey if you were wearing one. I wasn't. As I stood in line, I waited till the very last moment before slipping out of my blazer. As I strode across the gym to the picture area, I saw both the photographer and his assistant stop adjusting lights and tinkering with lenses as open-mouthed they followed me with their eyes till I was seated in front of the camera. As soon as they turned on the powerful photographer's lights on me, an otherworldly reflection from my shirt bathed the whole room in an electric toxic green sheen, causing the cameraman to quickly pull his head away from the viewfinder to protect his eyes. They both disappeared into a huddle, and after a few moments' whispered conversation they returned, turning off 2 of the 3 lights, leaving just the diffuser light for my portrait shot. I sat there, face glum as glum could be. My blood had turned to sand with humiliation. They took a couple of shots, but they didn't seem happy. Finally, one of them said, "Come on now, son, it's not so bad. Give us a wee smile." I mustered up the last of my strength and beamed a big smile straight into the camera. As soon as I did, the photographer blurted out, "Actually, no, don't smile. The reflection of your shirt, it's making your teeth green." Normally, when the photos came back, parents buy a selection of sizes for all the family. 4 8x12, 10 little passport ones, that sort of thing. That year, my mum bought one. And it was swiftly hidden in a bottom drawer in the depths of a long-forgotten piece of furniture. I actually found it a couple of years ago, and it's a truly staggering thing. It's the kind of picture that these days would cause social services to fly into a complete emergency red alert. Time to go home. Time to go home, and I ran the horrendous gauntlet of ridicule and taunting all the way from the school to my front door. All the while, the shirt blazing away unrelentingly. I shut the door behind me, and leaning back against it, I could still hear the baying mob like a torch procession in a 1940s horror movie. Marching into the back bedroom, I tore the shirt from my back, still wincing at its brightness. I screwed it up into a ball and I threw it into a driftwood fire to watch it burn. Only it didn't. It sat in the fire as the flames wrapped themselves round it, defiantly refusing to die. I watched and watched as it still refused to burn. My face was red and hot from the flames when suddenly it started to melt and bubble like plastic. It contorted itself and fried away into thousands of little green balls, causing the flames to intensify to such an extent I jumped back for fear that it would somehow reach out and drag me in. Finally, it was gone. My mum and I never spoke of it. She never questioned that the shirt was gone. Maybe she heard about my hideous experience from somewhere, but when she raked the bottom of the fire the next morning, the little metal buttons were clearly there in the ashes for everyone to see, along with a strange coloured residue. The next day, I didn't have to go to school. We went into town to buy a new grey shirt.